Well, I guess I had the first idea for Iraqi Icicle nearly 15 years ago now, but I'd just written bits and pieces, so really to write the novel itself took me between, say, 6 months and a year. I mean, it's 100,000 words in the novel, so basically it's a formula of writing 1,000 words a night for 100 nights, because I work full time during the day, so and so basically I'd say between 6 and 12 months.
What theme would you say it is?
Well, it's written in the private detective or the crime thriller genre, and it's set in Brisbane between 1988 and 1992. Or rather 86 to 92, and it's basically, it's got a lot of sort of themes in it. There's a certain anti-war flavour to it, which is a bit ironic given our setting here, but there's also a lot of humour in it, and I'm looking at how the big events in the world, say like the Iraq War or the US invasion of Panama in 1989 to arrest its President Manuel Noriega for drug running, how they play out in the personal lives and the culture of a country such as Australia. It sounds pretty heavy, but it's also a humorous book. I write a weekly humorous column for my newspaper, and I can't help myself, so it's got that sort of humour in it. But it is also a book, I guess, that you really need to read to see all its complexities.
Tell us a little bit about the plot of the book.
Well, basically, it's a fairly unusual plot. Now, it's written in the crime thriller genre. Now, normally in the crime thriller genre, your protagonist or the chief character is either a present or past serving law enforcement officer. But I wanted to explain to the reader pretty early on that you're going to have to take this book on board and look at the events in this book a little bit differently than you would expect from the genre. So my hero is actually a orphan who used to work as a bookmaker's clerk, betting on a racetrack, but he gets warned off a racetrack because he's involved in this scam, and so he can't work on racetracks, so he's unemployed and he's a bookmaker's clerk, and it's his view of the world that the reader is drawn into, and there's lots of dead bodies, the normal sort of thing. You've got the sexy, deadly women, and it's a normal kind of traditional crime thriller, but the comments are being made by this semi-professional gambler who's unemployed, and so it's his take on the world. Now, you don't have to agree with his take on the world, but at least it's challenging you. And I got a bit of a feedback the other day, and someone said, yeah, it took me a little while to get into the groove of the book, but once I got there, it was great, and I finished it all very quickly. So, that's what I want. I don't want to just do another formula book. I do want to do a novel. I do want to do something that is new. And how successful I am, I guess, is up to the reader to judge.
What inspired you to write this book?
Well, I guess I've been writing most of my life. I'm a professional journalist, and as I said, I started to write this book not long after the first Iraq War. Well, I started to conceive of this book and write bits and pieces of it, and then the book evolved. I mean, it's a fascinating process. I had a general idea of what the book was about, and I had a general time frame reference, but then all these other interesting things crept into it. Like between 1986 and 1992 was the start of the internet, and that's got a huge impact on the world. It has had an impact, a huge impact. And mobile phones, or cell phones as they're called in many countries, they really only started to proliferate between 1986 and 92. And of course, younger people, because they've grown up with computers and the internet and the World Wide Web, which really only started in about 92, 93, as far as I know, they think that it's always been there. So it's interesting to see the genesis of these mobile phones and computers and the internet, and so that's partly what I deal with in my book as well.
Where was the venue for the launch, and were there any special guests?
We had the launch at the Strathpine Library. They were very good to us and allowing us to have the venue there. And we did have some special guests, and I was very pleased that it was a cross-art evening. And it was firstly it was hosted by John Watson, who's the Pine Rivers Arts and Cultural Officer. Now we're very lucky in our area to have an Arts and Cultural Officer whose job it is, or whose brief it is, to promote all the arts and cultural places like this museum that we're in to the people of the Shire. So John hosted it, and then I guess we're starting from the performances. We had bush poet John Best. He's a world champion bush poet. He's been to America after becoming an Australian champ. So and he was kind enough to do a couple of bush poems for us. One he wrote especially in honour of my writing Iraqi Icicle.
Bernie emailed me and asked me, can you write a poem to give this book launch a bit of class? Well, I said we've already got class here. And you can start it with, they tell me Bernie's read a book. Well, I thought you can't have it both ways, class and a poem that starts like that. Bernie, your book will be classy enough without that. They tell me Bernie's read a book. Yeah, Dowling, Scoop, who works for Quest. I give you odds, it's bloody crook, I read his stuff. Who would have guessed that he could come up with a tale? I bet it's full of bloody lies about relics who should be in jail and pretty public private eyes. Iraqi Icicle. What gives? This is a very novel name. Its author, who in Lawton lives, now seeks to walk the path to fame. He says it's set between the coast, the sunshine gold, with lots of raunch, of intrigue, mystery he boasts. Well, damn it, Bernie, let us launch. Thank you.
My typesetter, Ian came along and talked to the people about how the process of writing books, and also how important libraries were to fostering literature. And then we had Nathan and Ash, and they performed an original song, and then they did a song that's very crucial to the book. It's by the Go-Betweens, which was a Brisbane band between 1978 and 1990, and that song was The Streets of Your Town. And as I say, once people have read the book, they'll understand how crucial that particular song is to the novel. And then finally, the whole thing was filmed by Bray Park filmmaker Robert Martin. So it was a very enjoyable evening. I think people were pleasantly surprised, and we did a bit of theatre. We brought the books in a coffin, and so it was all a bit of fun.
Your novel is published by a process called printing on demand.